On November 16th, 1957, in the middle of a small town named Plainfield, located in the state of Wisconsin, USA, there was a hardware shop whose owner was an elderly woman named Bernice Worden. Whenever the people of the village needed any goods, they used to come here, and therefore everyone knew Bernice very well. Her son Frank Worden was the deputy sheriff of Plainfield town. On the evening of November 16th at 5 p.m., when Frank reached the store, a close board was hanging on the store. He was very surprised to see this because the store always remained open until this time. However, the store door was not locked, so he thought that perhaps his mother would be working inside. But as soon as he entered the store, what he saw blew his mind. Fresh bloodstains were scattered on the floor of the store, and among the racks where some guns were kept, a .22 caliber gun was kept moved from its place. Apart from this, on the ground at the back door of the store, there were marks made of someone being dragged away. All these things were clearly pointing towards the fact that some major untoward incident had happened there. Worried, Frank immediately informed the local sheriff, Arthur Schley. Since it was a small town where a population of only 700 people lived, and where crimes were almost non-existent, this sight was truly frightening. Moreover, this matter was related to the mother of Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden, so Sheriff Arthur Schley immediately came to the store and started the investigation. A logbook used to be kept inside the store, in which a full record of customers' purchases was kept. When the pages of the shop's logbook were turned and checked, the last entry in it was of a man named Ed Gein, who had come to take antifreeze liquid. The people of the town considered Ed Gein to be dim-witted, because he talked very little with anyone and often remained lost in himself. He lived alone in a house like a fairly large farmhouse. In the eyes of the townspeople, Ed Gein was a person who did not have much understanding of worldly affairs. Because Ed Gein was the person who had bought something from the store for the last time before Frank Worden's mother disappeared, Sheriff Arthur Schley and Frank Worden thought that perhaps Ed Gein might know something about this, so they set out towards his house to question him. When Arthur and Frank reached that deserted and dilapidated farmhouse, there was a strange heaviness in the air. Ed Gein was not present there, but the door of the house was open. First, they called out to Ed Gein several times, but when Ed Gein did not give any answer, they went inside. But as soon as they stepped inside the house, they felt a strange smell, which was so terrifying that Sheriff Arthur Schley came outside and started vomiting. After some time, when he and Frank Worden somehow composed themselves and went inside, the scene that came before them was enough to disturb anyone's mental stability. As soon as the torchlight fell in the dark rooms, the first thing seen was human skulls. Some of these were as they were, and some were shaped in such a way as if they were things of everyday use. But this was nothing. As the two policemen moved further inside the house, the ground slipped from under their feet. They saw that the decoration items present inside the house were not made of wood or cloth, but of human skin and bones. The objects hanging on the walls, things kept in the cupboards, and the goods lying in the corners of the room, everything was made of human body. A belt and gloves kept in a cupboard were also prepared in the same way. Real skulls were attached to the four corners of Ed Gein's bed, which looked like part of some strange ritual. In a corner in the room, some masks were kept. When the sheriff looked closely at a mask, his breath stopped. That mask was of no one else but the face of Mary Hogan, the woman who went missing in 1954.
This scene itself was enough to shake anyone's soul, but the sight found in the kitchen was even more disturbing. There, things related to the human body were in such a state that no one could even imagine. Where some organs were boiling in water on the stove, at the same time the private organs of 9 women were kept inside the fridge. During the search, the police also found a women's suit from Ed Gein's house, seeing which Sheriff Schley's hair stood on end. This suit was prepared from the skin of different women, and its purpose was to assume the form of a woman. Everything present here was so heart-wrenching that at that time the police were feeling as if they were standing in some corridor of hell. But what was the relationship of that man named Ed Gein, whom the townspeople considered only a dim-witted and quiet person, with this terrifying sight and these scary things found in the house? After all, What kind of past did Ed Gein have? The layers of which, upon opening, started bringing the scariest secrets of his life forward. And the biggest question, what finally happened to Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden's mother, Bernice Worden? Was her disappearance just a coincidence, or the most important link of this scary story? Let's find out from the beginning. A story that breaks the limits of human thinking, and which can shake anyone to the core. Ed Gein's full name was Edward Theodore Gein. He was born on August 27, 1906, in the town of La Crosse, Wisconsin. In his house lived his father George Gein, his mother Augusta Gein, and his elder brother Henry George Gein. Ed Gein's childhood was no less than a nightmare. His father used to drink a lot of alcohol, and often, being intoxicated, used to beat his wife and children. On the other hand, Ed Gein's mother Augusta Gein was a very religious kind of woman. She believed in religious rules like a staunch Christian. Therefore, despite all this happening, she did not want to divorce her husband. Although she considered her marriage to George Gein her biggest mistake, and in her mind, a deep hatred for all men had been born. This hatred was so much that when she was pregnant, she did not want a boy to be born to her. But when after the first son Henry, the second son was born in the form of Ed Gein, Augusta looked at him and said with hatred, "I must have committed some big sin in my previous birth, that God gave me another son instead of a daughter." There would be very few children in this world whose mother herself hates them. But Ed Gein saw the bitterness of his mother's mind since childhood. He often heard taunts, and he was punished brutally for every small mistake. There was a strange fear in Augusta's mind regarding the outside world. She felt that at every turn, evils were following them which would swallow her family. They were living in La Crosse City at that time, but in Augusta's eyes, that city was not a place to live, but a sinkhole of filth, meaning a pit full of dirt and sin. She was convinced that the atmosphere there would corrupt the souls of her sons. In the obsession of saving her family from this evil, she settled with the whole family in a very small, isolated town named Plainfield. In Plainfield also, she deliberately did not take a house inside the main area of the town. Rather, she chose a deserted and isolated farmhouse in the outer area. She felt that if her two young sons met the people of the village or lived a social life, they would also become corrupt like them. Because of this isolation, the world of her sons remained confined only to her voice. Every day she used to read the Bible to her sons for hours, but even in these she never talked about love or peace. Rather, her talks were full of scary stories of sin, hell, and death. She had fixed this thing in Ed Gein's mind like a line on a stone, that every second woman in the world is a prostitute, and the outside world is only the path of destruction. This social isolation completely crushed Ed Gein's personality. At the age when children make friends, Ed Gein was growing up in a deserted Plainfield farmhouse amidst his mother's hatred and fanaticism. Whenever Ed Gein tried to talk to any girl, his mother, showing him the fear of the fire of hell, would lock him in the room for hours. In this way, Augusta had put Ed Gein in such a mental jail from where he had no way to get out. Although Ed Gein's elder brother Henry was not so influenced by his mother's words, Ed Gein's entire world was centered around his mother, and he could not ignore any of her words. Ed Gein used to step out of the farmhouse without his mother, only to go to school, but there too he could never mingle like a normal child. No friend of his was made in school, because his upbringing had taught him that outside people are impure. He often, while sitting in class, would suddenly start laughing loudly at something that only he could understand. Because of his actions, he was often bullied in school. But the biggest trouble for Ed Gein was that when he returned home after being bullied, he did not get sympathy from his mother either. The result of this was that after 8th grade, Ed Gein said goodbye to school and studies. After this, years passed, and Ed Gein's life remained confined to one house. Meanwhile, in the year 1940, when Ed Gein was 33 years old, his alcoholic father, George Gein, died. After the death of the father, the responsibility of managing the house came upon both brothers. Therefore, they started giving full time to their family's farmhouse and started helping in farming. To run the household expenses, they both also used to do small jobs as handymen in Plainfield town.
Ed Gein often did jobs like installing windows in people's houses, repairing old roofs,
painting on walls and fixing the fences of the fields. His elder brother Henry used to listen to the mother's words for sure, but he did not agree with those words. Despite the mother's dominance, he maintained contact with the outside world. Even his affair was going on with a widowed mother of 2 children living in Plainfield itself, and soon he was thinking about moving with her. But in 1944, this dream of his remained a dream forever. One day in 1944, Henry and Ed together were cleaning the bushes standing around the farmhouse. Both together made a pile of bushes and set it on fire. But in a short while, the fire became so uncontrollable that Henry did not even get a chance to compose himself, and he died. But the surprising thing was that without performing any post-mortem, suffocation was stated as the reason for his death, whereas he had also suffered a serious injury on his head which was ignored. After the death of the father and brother, Ed Gein suffered a deep shock, but his mother's shadow was still holding him. Apart from this, he had a hobby of reading books, due to which there was excitement in his life. Ed Gein had a large collection of books and magazines which contained stories and news related to World War II and especially German atrocities. He used to read about what kind of inhuman treatment was meted out to prisoners in Nazi concentration camps during the war. In those magazines, there was news and pictures in which there was mention of experiments being done with human organs. Where an ordinary person would tremble seeing all this, those stories seemed very fascinating to Ed Gein. When the world was sleeping, he used to remain lost in crime magazines and stories of human anatomy for hours in his room. The atmosphere of the house and these stories together had created such a parallel world in Ed Gein's mind that from outside he looked simple or less intelligent. But inside him, a terrifying storm was brewing, which just needed a spark. And that spark flared up when in December 1945, due to a stroke, his beloved mother Augusta also died. The death of the mother shook him to the core. He could not even imagine living a single day without his mother. The death of the mother created such a void inside Ed Gein which was impossible to fill. He used to sit for hours near his mother's empty bed and cry, smell her old clothes and call out to her. For the entire Plainfield town, Ed Gein was a poor orphan, but behind the walls of that silent farmhouse, the mental stability of Ed Gein, who had been left completely alone, had completely collapsed. In memory of his mother, he made the whole house a kind of temple. He closed those rooms which his mother used and started living himself in a small bedroom near the kitchen. He talked less with people and spent most of his time inside the house. In those black days of loneliness, Ed Gein gradually started hearing whispers in his ears. Call it his delusion or the beginning of his madness that 18 months after his mother's death, one night, crossing the limit of obsession, he took a pickaxe and shovel and reached straight to the graveyard. In the darkness of the night, Ed started digging his mother's grave like a madman. While removing the soil, his hands were not trembling, rather there was a strange madness in them. When he opened the coffin and saw his mother's rotting corpse, he got a strange peace. He separated his mother's head from the torso and brought it home with him. He used to sit near the head and talk for hours. He started feeling that his mother is just in a deep sleep and will wake up at any moment and embrace him. But even by keeping the mother's head in the house, his mind was not being satisfied. He was missing his mother very much. He now wanted to bring his mother back to life and wanted to feel her existence on his body. He thought that if he somehow makes a suit that looks like his mother, he can feel his mother by wearing it. To make this suit, a satanic idea was born in his mind, and from here started that sequence of digging graves and collecting human skin, which changed him from an ordinary human to the Butcher of Plainfield. He would go to the graveyard again and again, dig up corpses and bring them home. After this, he would skin those corpses very cleanly and dry them and sew them. In this way, by joining different parts, he prepared a suit. Every moonlight night, he would dress up like his mother wearing that suit and start dancing like a madman. By wearing that suit, he used to feel as if he was sleeping in his mother's lap. But besides the suit, he also made many things like lampshades, chairs, gloves, and purses about which he used to read in magazines and books. He started feeling peace living among them. He would dig a new grave every few days and bring a new toy to his house. Even from the terrifying filth spread all around in his house, now as if his mind was not able to get consolation,
Therefore, his sick mind now wanted something new and more terrifying. Now he was in search of such living women whose build or face matched his mother. On December 8, 1954, he went to a bar present in the town itself, whose owner was a woman named Mary Hogan. Her appearance matched Ed Gein's mother. She knew Ed Gein well, so she served a drink and also sat with him and started drinking. By that time, it was time for the bar to close, so only they both were there. As soon as Mary Hogan turned to the other side for some work, Ed Gein shot her on the forehead with his pistol and brought her corpse to his house in a pickup truck. He did the same brutality with Mary Hogan's corpse, which he had been doing until now. Here, a stir was created all around by the news of Mary Hogan's disappearance, because in a small area like Plainfield, crimes were very low. For a long time, the police investigated this case, but seeing Ed Gein's face, no one could think that such a cowardly man could even murder someone. Therefore, the needle of suspicion never turned towards him, and he continued roaming openly in Plainfield. He thought that by committing crime he would again and again hide the black truth hidden behind his innocent face, so he continued to carry out his black deeds again and again. But after the disappearance of hardware store owner Bernice Worden on November 16, 1957, when the police came to his farmhouse, for the first time a terrifying form of Ed Gein came before everyone. What Sheriff Arthur Schley and Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden saw in his house had shaken them. In such a situation, understanding the seriousness of the circumstances, the sheriff immediately called more police force. The entire police team was now in search of Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden's mother, Bernice Worden. Due to finding so many disturbing things from there, Frank Worden's heart was sinking with the apprehension of some untoward incident. This fear was eating him from inside that perhaps Ed Gein might have killed his mother like this. Although despite all this happening, Frank Worden, being a police officer, continued to move forward while composing himself. But when Frank Worden reached the garage built behind Ed Gein's farmhouse, his screams came out seeing the sight there. There, a corpse was hung upside down, tied by the feet like an animal in a slaughterhouse. The head of that body was missing, and very inhuman treatment was done with the rest of the body. When a sack kept nearby was searched, Bernice Worden's head was kept inside it. For a son, seeing his mother in this state was the world's biggest mental shock. Frank Worden had not even been able to emerge from that shock when just then a pickup truck arrives outside the farmhouse. Ed Gein was sitting inside the truck, for whom initially the policeman had come only for questioning, but the things that came out of his house had changed the whole story. Ed Gein was not at all surprised to see the police there, and instead of running away like a clever criminal, he comfortably got down from the vehicle and started looking towards the police. The police immediately put handcuffs on his hands and arrested him. But despite this, there was neither any frown on his face, nor any fear. The police sealed his house and took him with them. As soon as the news of this incident reached the media, the next day only Ed Gein's name was visible in the headlines of the newspapers. Pictures of his house were printed in the newspapers. It was written in detail about the heart-wrenching things found in his house. All this was so terrifying and scary that the small town of Plainfield, with a population of 700 people in Wisconsin state, suddenly came into the eyes of the whole world, and long lines of media people started appearing outside his house. His house was being called House of Horror, and Ed Gein was given the name Butcher of Plainfield in the newspapers. The people of Plainfield were also surprised how someone looking so simple could be so cruel and dangerous.
After this, the interrogation of Ed Gein started. He did not open his mouth for a full 30 hours, but after this he put a strange demand before the investigators. He demanded apple pie in a very childish way, on which there should be cheddar cheese. As soon as apple pie was given to him to eat, he became happy like children, and the very next moment after eating it, he vomited his truth. He confessed that he murdered Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. He told that on the morning of November 16, 1957, he had gone to Bernice Worden's store and murdered Bernice Worden with a .22 caliber gun kept in the rack there, and had brought her to his house by putting her in his pickup truck. Apart from confessing these two murders, he also accepted that during this time he had dug up more than 9 bodies from the graveyard. The surprising thing was that all the bodies were of women, but the police suspected that besides those 2 women, he must have murdered more people who were missing from the surrounding area for a long time. He was also suspected of making a teenager girl, Evelyn Hartley, 8-year-old Georgia Weckler, and 2 friends named Victor Travis and Ray Burgess disappear, who could never be found again. But Ed Gein did not confess to these allegations. Besides this, many people later also started believing that Ed Gein himself had murdered his brother Henry because his elder brother used to talk against his mother, which Ed Gein could not tolerate at all. This point gets strength also because at the time of death, there were injury marks on his brother's head, which the police had ignored. Since Ed Gein had confessed to taking out 9 bodies from graves and murdering 2 women, he was soon produced in court for punishment. Every person present there wanted to see that beast closely who had shamed humanity. But when he came to court, seeing his strange actions and talks, the court ordered to get his mental checkup done before pronouncing any sentence. When a team of doctors examined Ed Gein, the reports shocked everyone. He had a serious mental illness named schizophrenia. Due to this illness, he had hallucinations, meaning he heard such voices and saw such things which had no existence in the real world. He truly believed that his dead mother, Augusta Gein, talks to him. Besides this, he was also found to be a victim of necrophilia. In this illness, a person feels attracted towards corpses. On the basis of these medical reports, the court declared Ed Gein unfit for trial. The judge believed that due to his mental condition, he is not capable of understanding the gravity of his crime, and therefore he was sent to a mental asylum instead of jail. Some weeks after this, the auction of Ed Gein's Plainfield farmhouse and all its terrifying things was about to happen. But exactly 1 day before the auction, his house was burnt to ashes in mysterious circumstances. No one could ever know who burnt that house and why. Some people even believed that the satanic forces of that house itself burnt the house to ashes, so that the full truth of that house could never come before anyone. Ed Gein spent the next 10 years of his life in that same madhouse, where Ed's behavior was generally very quiet, but around every full moon he would become delusional and start talking strange things. Finally, in 1968, doctors declared him capable of facing trial in the case of Bernice Worden's murder. After this, a hearing was held in court, and he was also considered guilty of murder. But seeing his mental condition, in the end, he was declared not guilty by reason of insanity. Even after this, he remained in the Mendota Mental Health Institute instead of jail, and finally, on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77, he died in the Mendota Mental Health Institute due to respiratory and heart failure. After Ed Gein's death, his terrifying shadow was left behind forever. But this strange and disgusting story of his changed the world of horror cinema. Inspired by him, many famous films like Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs were made, in which the actors playing Ed Gein's role became associated forever with the name of their character. Apart from this, in October 2025, Netflix also made a series on Ed Gein's life by the name Monster, The Ed Gein Story. Even today, not only in Plainfield, but in the history of America, this case is like a wound that people want to forget, but are not able to forget even if they want to. If this story of Ed Gein has shaken you,